Hello and welcome to the new business chat show, the chat show to spark or fuel your own business thoughts. And as the entrepreneur's mentor, I support other business owners to start, develop, market scale, and grow their own business. And in this third series of my podcast, I can't wait to continue introduce you to some fantastic guests that are here to share their story. And the guests that I've lined up for you in this series want to explore their startup journey and their experience that I know will help you and others with either starting your first enterprise, being in those early years, or even running a more established business. And today I'm delighted that with me is Jane Fryatt of Face HR. Hi Jane, how are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm good, thank you.
Awesome. And just to kick off, Jane, just tell us a little bit about what you do and what the business is.
Sure. Thank you for having me on your podcast, first of all. We're a small consultancy business supporting small business owners with their HR needs, whether it's kind of one-off advice, perhaps they've got a tricky situation, or they're taking on their first employee, through to more regular clients where we become part of their team, delivering them in their HR department.
Awesome. I look forward to exploring that a little bit more as we go through the podcast, and particularly how that plays into the journey. But I'd love to jump back to your early days and that moment when you first thought, "I'm going to start my own business."
Yeah.
What were your trigger points? What was it that made you go, "That's what I want to do"?
Well, I've always wanted to have my own business since a very early age, actually. My dad was self-employed. He had his own business, although when I look back now, he had very much created himself a job, as it were, rather than growing a business. So I wanted to grow a business. I didn't know what it was in, but kind of deep inside me, I always knew I wanted to do that. And when I was a lot younger, I got one of those CD-ROMs from NatWest, the small business bank as it was then, and did a business plan for a fair trade coffee shop and kind of bookshop, which I never ever did. But it just shows I kind of had that passion from quite a young age. I wanted to do my own thing and I wanted to be my own boss and have the freedom and accountability. And yeah, and then I went into HR. And so obviously the natural thing then when I felt ready to go out on my own was to do it in HR.
Brilliant, brilliant. And the business now you have employees, don't you? And you
Yeah.
you don't have a job, as you've just referred to as your dad.
Oh,
That's
I don't
nice.
know what my job is now, but um, yeah, no, there's four of us in total. Plus, we use some associates as well, but there's four myself and then three others in the business, all employed. Um, yeah, so yeah,
A
absolutely,
good
we are.
place. A good
Yeah.
place you are. Yeah. And can you remember that first day in your own employment of
Yeah.
your own business? What were you doing, and what were you thinking that day?
Oh, yeah, it's really interesting because I had quite a long period of time where I was sort of still working for the employer that I was working for when I first launched. So I had kind of like a mixed start where I was doing, my business only for like a period, a couple of months. So the first week I remember I had booked to go to an exhibition, which was quite exciting and terrifying, really. It was like an Oxlep event, so really supportive network that I got to know really early on in my journey, and I went along to this expo that they held, and it's really funny when I look back now. Some of the people I met on that day are now clients, like 2, 3, 4 years later, they've turned into clients. At the time I did this expo, I really wasn't sure how it went. I didn't feel like I got any work from it, as you think, you need to kind of get work on the day. But of course, later on, it just shows all of these actions, add up to something in time.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I remember preparing for that. I remember having an absolute disaster because I decided to bake my own cakes and they all went wrong and it was all stressful. And so yeah, a few lessons learned in the first week.
Well, I know you like a slice of cake. Perhaps that comes
Oh
back to
yeah.
your sustainable coffee shop in that subconscious mind that you have from that side.
Yeah.
And we always enjoy a cake when we get together, don't we? So
Oh, definitely,
yeah.
yeah.
So early years then. So what was the biggest thing that you looking back now you'd say I wouldn't do that again?
Oh yeah, there's probably quite a few, but um, I think one of the things that I did wrong fairly early on was I knew that I wanted to grow the business through networking. And I went along to a meeting and everyone was so lovely and friendly and warm. And so I kind of joined, and you're like this really welcomed person. And I joined, and then yeah, it did. I didn't get any referrals from it whatsoever. There was totally the wrong people in the room. I didn't pause and go to enough other events, you know. Um, and yeah, I wasted quite a lot of money and time, you know, going to events. This was like a network of, it wasn't just a one-off event, it was like a network of, um, you know, business networking sort of organization, and it just wasn't right. And I think so I do always say to people now when they talk to me about networking, we still get the majority of our business through networking, but I always say, like, take your time and have some sort of criteria, you know, that you're judging the event from. So after that experience, or even I think at the time, I did have a bit of a system where I was rating like how many, you know, accountants, recruiters, business coaches are in the room. They're the kind of people that are going to give me work. And then having quite a sort of diagnostic approach to which is the right forum. And I didn't do that for that event. I just went on, oh, everyone's so friendly and they're really lovely. And it just, yeah, it was the wrong criteria.
Yeah, yeah. Easy way to waste some money. But
Yeah,
you know,
and it's time.
I don't
I,
know. Obviously, you've obviously learned from that journey because you do still
yeah.
network a fair bit, don't you? And like you say, you get a lot of your work from referrals from that side of it. So
Absolutely. And now we do get more referrals from clients, which is an amazing position to be in. As you grow, you know, you're going to build your reputation, and hopefully your clients are going to, you know, pass on your details. But in those early days, yeah, networking was a big thing. Um, I think the other thing that's made a huge difference for me is just being really focused about what am I spending my time on. And it's very, I remember the first time I sort of we offer like a HR checkup of people's documents. And I spent like 6 or 7 hours doing this checkup of, you know, for a service that I'm going to charge like a few £100 for, you know, and it's just, you want to do a good job, but it's that kind of 80/20 thing, isn't it? You know, so we do them in about an hour now.
brilliant. Brilliant.
Um,
Yeah. I know you've known you for a long time, and I know you'll be always conscientious. And I guess that was part of that playing through, isn't it? You know, we've got to do a good job to earn the money, but are we earning the money at the level we need to ultimately?
Yeah, yeah, and and obviously you're still learning at that stage. You know, you're setting up your processes. We've got a lot of sort of templated processes now, which I was kind of creating a lot of those at that time. And for the first few years, you know, we were still, well, I was still finding my feet and what sort of clients do I like working with. One of the things I did really early on, actually, right from the start, when I was first going to your networking, Mike, was say that I had a specialist area, and I think people often are scared to say, you know, this is my specialism. But for me, that worked really well because I felt that people just took more notice when I said, actually, I like to work with, you know,
Hmm.
science and engineering type businesses. That's what I enjoy doing. And people seem to write it down. Whereas when I said, oh, an HR consultant, you know, and there's maybe two or three others in the room doing a similar thing, you're not really memorable.
Yep. Yep. How do you stand out from the crowd? Yeah. And I
Yeah.
always remember when you came back from maternity leave and you brought the little one strapped to yourself, and people still refer to you,
Yes.
don't they, in conversation? Oh, I remember you at that networking event, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm
and
not sure. You do lots of things, don't you? And I look back now and think, God, why did I do that? But I suppose it's you've just got to deal, you know, with what you're dealing with at the time. You know, you bring yourself, and I was very much, um, you know, I had that mantra of like 90% of success is showing up. So I'm going to show up, even if I'm not feeling like showing up. And that sort of got me through a lot of that time when really I was, you know, I'd go in my handbag and it's full of nappies, and it's not like the best look, but but
well,
like you say,
what
um,
what I love about yourself, and it comes back to why you did an expo in your early moments of starting the business, is that you know about the awareness. You know, you've got to create
mm,
awareness for yourself and be aware. And it leads me on to quite an interesting point that I wanted to explore with you today, which is obviously the role of mother versus the role of business owner.
mm,
Because obviously you've got two young ones as well, haven't you? From that side of it. So
yeah.
So is that about a discipline of your time? Is that
Yeah,
controlling your time? Is what can you share that helps?
yeah, I think it's I've always found it really helpful because it's not even just when they're little, it's almost like you have a reset. And sometimes that can be on an annual basis or maybe even less time than that. And so I have this, I know you do these default diaries as well, Mike, and I've always found that really helpful to say, what time do I have available and what activities do I want to fill that time with? And so going back from 2018, I have like a default diary for when literally Connie was like a baby and I had one day of nursery a week. And what was I going to do with that day? Because obviously it would be very easy just to load the dishwasher and do all those things. But actually, no, this was my time on the business. And then obviously when she went more full time into nursery, that was a different set of timings. And then we had COVID, which obviously blew the whole thing out of the water. So I've got like a COVID default diary. And I remember sort of writing it on the wall, like, this is your time, this is mummy's time, and just teaching your kids like this time, quality time for you, there's quality time for me, I think is really important. And obviously it's very messy in between, but if you don't have a plan, you don't know how far off the plan you are, do you?
Yeah.
And then even as they've started school and then we've got different clubs coming in, I do redo that default diary. I need to redo it again now. That's one of my things as my role has moved from being delivery of HR support to, managing others delivering HR support and then really increasingly focused on business development. I feel the need to say, well, what is my time best utilized for? And I find the default diary really helpful for that. And obviously someone's going to phone me and that's going to go, off to one side for a minute, but at least I know, right, when I'm coming back, what am I meant to be doing
At that
now?
time.
I found that really helpful.
Yeah.
Obviously the other thing is just to realize that you can't control things that are outside your span of control. So I do remember doing a conference call and being really pleased that I'd got through this conference call. And then someone rang me up afterwards and said, "What was that screaming in the background?" And I was like, "Oh, that was my daughter. She was in the other room. She was fine, but she was screaming." And I didn't realize they could hear it, and you sort of, those moments where you think, oh God, you know, it's
Yeah.
all gone to pot. But yeah, things don't always go to plan, do they?
And what's the bit about your business that you most enjoy doing right now?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, I suppose, I mean, I do always enjoy meeting people who are just starting out their business. I had a call with a guy on Friday he's had his business a while actually, but he's employing for the first time and just finding out, what's their business, what do they do, what are they trying to build, and I find that really interesting and motivating, and then just sharing a bit of expertise. He asked me a question and I sent a reply and to one thing specifically about insurance. Actually, it wasn't even about HR stuff, and he said, "Oh my God, so many people have said to me, oh, I don't know, or just ignored the question, I don't know how to answer that." And so having a network of people that I can kind of say, I'll talk to this person because they know what they're talking about, and I probably can't answer it, but they might be able to.
Hmm.
I enjoy doing that as well.
That leads me on to something I was going to ask you a bit later, but we may as well bring it to the core now. Is that you just mentioned about you like helping people their first employee, and obviously that's a big part, I guess, of anybody listening on the call today for an early business show, if you like. What's the considerations that I should be making then if I was employing someone for the first time from your perspective, from a HR perspective?
I think the major one is, what is the purpose of this role? What are you gonna get them to do? And are you being realistic about that? Because quite often, we'll speak to someone who's gonna bring someone into their business and they'll say, "Oh, I want an apprentice," or "I want this type of person." And when you pick under, well, what is it you're actually asking them to do? That maybe isn't the best option or the most suitable means to achieve that task. Often the business owner hasn't really sat down and actually written a list of what do I do day to day and where does that fall in that kind of like level of skill versus what I enjoy doing, and therefore giving you that quadrant of stuff that one, it's low skill, and two, I don't really enjoy doing it. And have I tried outsourcing it? And maybe that doesn't work. I've decided now that I actually need someone in-house to do that job, and that can form the basis of the job description. Whereas if you're saying, I need someone to answer the phone and to go out and do quotes and to do my social media and to maybe do a bit of finance admin, you're like, that's not one person, is it? When you think about it, it's very easy to kind of think, oh, I'll just get someone in who kind of does a bit of everything, and they end up doing a bit of nothing really because they're not getting the time with you either. So I think thinking about what is it you want them to do, what's the main focus of their job, what's it going to enable you to do, and then you can start to think about, is it an experienced person or is it a less experienced person? Is the person sitting next to you, or are they remote? Are there things that you could actually get your bookkeeper to do more of, or use a VA, or because employing isn't always the right answer straight away. I think particularly if you've not delegated anything, I would hope that you've maybe done some, outsourcing of some work, even just to get used to kind of giving a task in a way that's, defined. And does that make sense?
Yeah, and what I love about that response just demonstrates what I believe that you bring to the table is that, I think traditionally people would look at your type of support, HR support, saying, well, I'm going to employ my first employee, so this is the person who's going to do
Mm,
my contracts for me and going to do my handbook and all that
yeah.
sort of stuff. But it's much more a people strategy, really, isn't it? In terms of actually understanding, well, who is your first hire? Is it the right first hire? Is it the right role? Is it part-time, full-time? What does that look like? And I certainly see it, and it sounds like you do as well, is that that's certainly the first employee tends to be one that everybody tries to stretch like a morph,
Mm.
trying to do anything and everything rather than being, okay, what do I really need in this business right now?
Yeah, because otherwise you're not giving clear guidance, and that leads on to, how are you going to measure their performance? How do you know what good looks like? So if you think about in 6 months' time when they've passed their probation, what will be different in your business when this person's here? Because if you don't know, if you can't answer that question, then they're not going to know. That nobody comes in and like makes up their own job really, not easily anyway, particularly when there's no processes probably in the business. Get them to write the processes
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah,
um,
yeah. I'm
but
a big fan
yeah,
of that for sure. Getting new team members to write your systems and processes for you and gives you another document to check your understanding of what you verbalize to them as well. Mm.
yeah, definitely. And we have a thing where we have like a team meeting where we try and say, what's not working, like what can we improve? And we use Asana as like our tool, which has all our checklists on it. And, any of the team can add in an additional step if they want to, or, amend it for
Brilliant.
the for a particular client, for example. So it is documented. But
Mhm.
that's took me a long time to get to that point. I had two staff before we even had Asana, let alone, documented processes. So it's one step at a time, isn't
Mhm.
it?
And talking about one step at a time, when did you get to the point where you felt I've now got a business, I've now got a business that it isn't just about me in a job like your dad, for example.
I think like this literally this year.
Yeah.
Because before I took on another consultant in November, and she has been amazing in terms of taking a lot of day-to-day client work from me. That's not to say my other consultant, Robin, who's been with us for a few years now, she also did that, but I think I wasn't ready. Like I was still very much the face of the business, and I still am now. Any client can phone me up at any time, obviously, but they'll probably get a quicker response if they speak to one of the team. And so it's been my own journey to start to let go of some of that, as I'm sure this happens to many business owners. We're the face of the business. Oh, the client needs us. It's got to be us. And we're just kidding ourselves, really, aren't we? That actually the client needs an outcome and that can be delivered by somebody else. And so this year I felt like that has happened. And now I'm on the next phase of the journey, which is what's my job now?
What 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 would you share with the people listening in about the letting go part? 'Cause that's not the easiest part, is it? In terms of, can people do it as well as me? Can I trust them, etc. What was your learns about being in a position where you could let go and trust others?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think it's just having the right people around you, isn't it? And and just having like you say, the confidence in them. They're never going to be 100% like you, of course not. But I learned early, not early on, but last year I had a bit of a nightmare with my own staff, okay, which people found quite hilarious because obviously we're in HR. But I hired two wrong people, not because they weren't good people, like they were, but they just weren't right for this business. And we're a consultancy business. We do move very quickly from one client to the next. It's, it's quite fast paced, although we're relaxed, we're all, balancing work and life and all that. But hiring in-house HR people doesn't work. And I did that twice and realised this is not right. And the other thing that I realised is that obviously, whilst I always say to clients, what's your makeup of your team? You don't want the same person 10 times. You want to have a bit of sort of diversity of person, thinking, background, all of that stuff. But actually in this type of business, the client needs to have the same experience, whether they pick up the phone to me or to Robin or to Laura or to Kai, it needs to be the same feel, the same kind of dynamic, the same values, all of that. So we now do a DISC assessment as part of the hiring process. And I was very clear, if they don't fit this, then I'm not going to interview them. And actually that has really worked. And we're actually going to do our insights profiling tomorrow, which will be quite interesting as a team, to see, because although we're all in a similar sort of segment, as it were, there are definitely variations on a theme, and it's just interesting internally to understand that as well.
Yeah, no, I love disc profiling, insights, whatever. It's just understanding the profile of your colleagues and how you can communicate with them, as long as that's respected as the organisation that you work in. You don't just do it as a tick box exercise. They're super powerful. It's interesting because you seem to have had a very similar journey to myself. Because when I had my bookkeeping and accounting business, I employed two people, and I made the mistake the second time, like yourself. But I thought, it must have been the individual, not
Yeah.
but they'd both come from working in an organization for 20 years doing bookkeeping one particular way. And when they had to come and be a bit more dynamic and be, like your business being consultancy and switching between jobs, they just couldn't deal with it. And they couldn't see how to use a particular software different ways because that's how they used it for 20 years. So
Mhm.
interesting to see that sort of similarity between our experiences. What about looking back into your journey then? What's the bit you've not really enjoyed about being a business owner?
Oh, working in midnight.
Okay.
I mean, I've done a lot of that. Obviously, with COVID, I had two young kids at home. I had to pretty much turn my day upside down. So I was with them all day, and then I'd do the business in the night, which is awful. And it made me unwell, actually. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. But even just having boundaries I find that really challenging. I love dealing with our clients. They'll ring me at 5, I answer the phone, then I get a, you know, rap over the knuckles from everyone at home. It's just having boundaries. I personally find that quite difficult.
Yeah.
And being really clear sort of why I'm doing this, obviously, which is to have a fulfilling and interesting life, but also to make sure that I'm spending time with my family and everything. It's just getting that balance is a constant
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think back and, if I wouldn't swap it for the world, Mike, like I'm sure you wouldn't. Can you imagine, you know, having to go into same place every day and like put in a leave request and oh my God, I just wouldn't do that now.
Yeah. You're not employable anymore, Jane.
No.
And what advice would you give to a younger Jane that's probably just about to start her own business, and she was sat down with you and on a one-to-one? What advice would you
Mm.
give to Jane?
Oh, goodness. That's a really good question. I think the main thing is to enjoy what you do, isn't it? Right? We do this every day. And so find something you love doing. There's no point saying I'm a generalist HR person. I could do anything you want when if you hate doing, bonus schemes or you hate dealing with well-being or whatever it might be, like we're very clear, this is what we do, and if you want someone to come and run a well-being day, then it's not us. We're not the best business for you. So I think I've always been really clear, this is the type of HR that we do, and that works for our clients. And we have a very low churn rate of our clients, which is fantastic, because I think we are really clear about this is what we are. And I'm not afraid to say to other HR consultants that, go and talk to that person because they might actually be a better fit. So I think it's know your niche and what you enjoy doing and what lights you up inside, because you've got to do this for the long run.
Mm.
And don't be afraid to be yourself. We all see these awful posts on LinkedIn, which have obviously been written by some AI tool. And people can see that. They can smell that a mile off. Just be yourself, and there's no other way really.
Brilliant. And I want to just sort of jump back to the journey of a startup entrepreneur. And do you think that people hire at the right time? We talked earlier about hiring your first person, but
Mm,
what does timing look like for you? Do people sort of like struggle on and then like you didn't enjoy doing the extra hours and all that sort of stuff,
mm.
rather than saying, actually, I need to make a decision now?
Yeah, I think often, possibly. I suppose, I mean, one, you need to be paying yourself first. Obviously, I do hear people taking people on, they're not paying themselves properly. I think that you definitely should be doing that first. Otherwise, again, you haven't really got a business, have you, if it's not able to sustain the salary of what you're doing. Um, but yeah, I think it's just keeping an eye on, sorry, what is your time best spent doing, and just being really clear about that, because it's very tempting to think, oh, I can just do this quick little thing and it's only going to take me a minute, but what's the cost? You're choosing to do something, you're choosing not to do something else, right?
Mm.
And it's just being really conscious about that. So the other thing I see people do is, oh, I'm just going to give my mum some few hours. And you think again, oh, I get that, like family business and all that kind of thing. But at the same time, is that really what you need? And are you going to get the best for the job that you need doing by using, a sort of spare family member, as it were, for the want of a better word? I mean, it might be your mum, great, but have you consciously made that decision, or have you just done a favour to someone else, by giving them a job?
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I think timing wise, I think this really does vary from business to business. I mean, some businesses we speak to, they've literally incorporated the company and they know they need to employ straight away because of the type of the business they do. If you're a grounds maintenance business, you pretty much are going to need people straight away. If you're a service like us, it's probably a bit slower.
yeah,
It really does vary. Um, yeah, I
for
don't
sure,
know.
sure. Just to finish off, then, would there be any other tips that you would give to, your biggest tip you'd give to somebody else who's on the early years of their own business?
I think definitely just reach out to people for advice, because all of us are happy to talk to new business owners, whether it's, bookkeeping, accountancy, legal, people like me, business coaches, obviously, you can get a lot of information, and, just you need to talk to people to find out who's your person as well. Often I don't know about you, but when I took on my first accountant, I changed a couple of times account because I'd just gone with who someone told me to go with and they weren't the right person for me, So again, you don't really know this when you first start out. You just listen to whoever's giving you that information. But I think, you will get a sense of people, even if you just sit and have a coffee. And all of us type of business support type providers are happy to have one-to-ones with people. That's how we spread our own reputation, isn't it? And also how we hear like what's going on in the market, and what's working, what's not working. So don't be afraid to just say, have you got time for a coffee?
Awesome. Brilliant, Jen. Really, really useful shares as always. I knew you'd, as I said in the introduction, chosen my guests to add value and share some tips that I would believe would be useful for people on the early years of their business. And obviously, I've lent a little bit cheekily on your expertise today to ask a big question about hiring that first person, and really appreciate your help. If people want to check you out, if they want to look you up, where how do they do that? Where do they go?
Oh, I am on LinkedIn, so yeah, I'm more than happy to connect with people on LinkedIn. And you'll find all my details on there. That's probably the best place to go. To be honest, I've got some videos on YouTube about taking on your first employee and giving advice just on the steps to take. So have a look on there as well. It's just at Jane Fryatt HR. The other thing that I've loved doing, which sounds really weird, is a business plan. I did a 5-year plan in 2020, which we just hit. The revenue target we set 5 years ago, we actually hit, which is pretty unbelievable
Love
given
that.
everything that's happened in the last 5 years. So yeah, whether you stick to the plan or you don't stick to the plan, I still think you need to do a plan, otherwise how do you know where you are?
Exactly that, Jane. Exactly that. If you haven't got a plan, you don't know if you've got there in the first place, do you? So, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, it
Brilliant.
helps you to answer some of those questions that maybe you didn't know that you needed to ask.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's always the biggest challenge for many startup businesses is they don't know the questions they don't know to ask. Yeah, good point. Good point. Excellent. Well, thanks, Jane. I'm going to just wrap up today, but thank you again for joining me for
Thank you,
this
Mark.
latest podcast and sharing your expertise and knowledge and obviously your own journey. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much. See you soon.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in for the latest edition of my new business chat show. Do subscribe to the channel, and when I release my next podcast, you'll be one of the first to know.